Let's talk some of the breaking news today for today's video. It's massive, bro. Every Premier League fan has had to, in recent seasons, come to terms with their club spending, with these new profit sustainability rules that are being put in place by the Premier League. And for those who are not aware at the time of recording, Leicester City has been granted a massive waiver to the fear of a points deduction, right? So to read off kind of what has been said by the Premier League, I'll go into that. We'll get the details out. We have Austin here on the show because he is a Leicester City fan. He's going to react to this news and what it really means, not just for Leicester City fans, but more specifically for fans of, let's say, Manchester City, maybe even Everton. We'll talk about just implications it has beyond this club itself. But before we get there, if you haven't done so already, like the video down below, subscribe to the channel, especially if you're a fan of the Premier League and American fans talking about that league. All right, Austin, let's jump in, bro. Look, man, this is huge news, obviously. What I want to do is kind of share my screen and kind of read out just what this really kind of means for the Premier League and just what was announced today, right? So here is, I'm going to pull it on Twitter. And here's kind of what this looks like. All right. So I'll read it off. I don't want to be too boring. Let's go to the first paragraph first. The Premier League is surprised and disappointed by the Independent Appeal Board's decision to uphold an appeal lodged by Leicester City FC regarding the league's jurisdiction over the club's alleged breach of its profit and sustainability rules when the club was a member of the Premier League. In March this year, the Premier League referred Leicester City to an independent commission for an alleged breach of PSRs relating to the assessment period ending financial year 22-23. So that specific season, right?
Yeah.
Once submitted, the club's financial results demonstrated that it had exceeded the permitted £105 million threshold for the relevant period. Leicester City subsequently challenged the commission's authority to hear the case on the grounds of jurisdiction. This challenge was dismissed by the independent commission, a decision which Leicester City appealed. So massive news, bro. Massive news. I think for everybody kind of reacting to this is honestly what it looks like. Leicester City fans just fucking holding it up for everybody to see. It's wild, man. A wild time, and this, I think it's going to have a lot of implications for what's coming with the 115 charge club themselves, Manchester City. They now have more ammunition to work with. I'll let you go into it, bro. How do you feel about this? How big of a decision is this for Leicester City fans?
Well, it's massive for us. Getting that basically the points deduction off of our backs. That's massive. Just to kind of go in, kind of what happened is, so we obviously went over the threshold for 22-23, but the rules came in literally a month after our financial period ended in the Premier League. So basically we were relegated by then. So therefore, and that's where it's talking about the jurisdiction, where it was Premier League's jurisdiction, but we were already relegated by then. So therefore, it's not their jurisdiction. So that's kind of how we got out of that. That, I guess, that's kind of the shortened version of it, but it's massive because it takes the big monkey off our back that we've been having the whole summer and ever since March when this kind of came out. So it definitely helps us and hopefully gives us a breather, at least for this season, to where I'm going to come in. Yeah, that's the 1-0 us versus the Premier League. Yeah, take that. But yeah, it's big, and now we kind of got no excuses for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and that's my next question, bro. Is like, as a Leicester City fan now, we've talked about this so much in the group chat amongst ourselves, right? Like, what are the odds Leicester City is just going to stay up as one of the promoted sides? I think the majority of us give Leicester City the best chance of the newly promoted sides. However, right, there was always, this point deduction looming. Like, how big would it be? How many points would it actually be? Like where do we go from there? You said it yourself when the news broke. This feels like 6 points earned right off the bat. So now, where do you see Leicester City finishing?
I think we could stay up. Now, our squad's not the best. And I think looking at our squad before the season, we're a little, but I think, like you said, we were probably the best out of the 3 that came promoted. But I think also what's helped a little bit is our first 3 games, because we've lost 2-1 in all those, and that being Spurs, Fulham, and Villa. So 3 pretty decent teams. And we've stayed in those games. So I think that's definitely helped. But I think I mean, like you said, like I said, it was 6 points earned without even playing a match, and I think that's. I mean, we know in the scheme of relegation that six. I mean, we talk about 6 pointers all the time in a very different sense, but it's massive what losing 6 points can do to a race.
Yeah, or gaining 6 points, right? Shit, we
Yeah,
saw it with Brentford, we saw it with Everton. Like how many times have those points at the end of the season really counted for so much more than just a few slot shifts in the table? Like I don't know. And by the way, you have that draw against Spurs, so like you still right
yeah,
now Leicester as the time of recording sit 15th. There's no fear of that number just dropping them down even
yeah,
further. So in my opinion, there's pressure now in Leicester City. Like you guys should stay up.
yeah.
You should. And if you don't, it will feel like a pretty big disappointment because I don't know, you guys were on the brink of realizing a shift right back down to the championship. And this on a random Tuesday after Labor Day, you're gifted this news, and it's I think it automatically now, like I said, just puts pressure on this side. Which leads me to my next question. I'm kind of curious from your side. Later on this channel, we're going to rank transfer window business by every one of the 20 Premier League clubs. That video will be coming, so stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't. When we do that, I'll be honest, bro, I'll give a little bit of teaser. Leicester City was way down the totem pole on my side because of the fact that you guys just couldn't really go out and spend, right? You got Minte, you got a couple other pieces, but like the window was almost at the equivalent of like Newcastle, where you just couldn't do a lot of business due to restrictions. So with this change now, is Winter I don't know. Like how much wiggle room does Leicester City really have?
You
In the
know,
winter window, does that change at all?
I don't think it changes much because I think the issue is we still don't earn a lot and we just don't have a lot of wiggle room for future FFP or PSR, whatever. It's all the same. But yeah, I think looking at our team, we got a couple okay guys. Like I'm not like game changers. Like Buenanote's looked by far our best signing. I mean, he scored against Villa. He's looked by far. We haven't really seen from Bilal what he can do. I mean, D. Cordova, Reed, and IU are just, Premier League veterans. They're not going to win you games, but, they're just kind of there. Our squad isn't great, but I just feel like for the other half of our squad who has been in the Premier League, I just feel like that helps a ton where it's like, okay, they've done it and they're part of the top they're part of the top 5 finishing teams. Like some of them, yes, Jamie Vardy's might be 36 years old, but they've been there and they've done it. They've been successful. So hopefully that will help us. I mean, really this season, when we got promoted, this season's all about staying up and then maybe we can start to rebuild and keep going. But I mean, we were talking about it before. I mean, I feel like this is one of the biggest 2-month period in Leicester City history because if we go down, we can still face penalties from last season in the championship and Premier League. Like we still have possibility of getting points deducted in the future, and that could just absolutely kill our club. And so I think we have a relatively favorable run of games. I think 6 of our 7 next games are against bottom half teams. Then we play Arsenal in there. That'll be a free hit. But if we could just somehow stay up this season, that'd be absolutely huge for us.
Yeah, dude, it would be massive, and it just makes the next window that much more interesting. But again, I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if it created maybe just a different mental shift where even if you had the room, you weren't spending, but now again just to avoid any sort of controversy around PSR. And then you get this news, maybe it shifts something mentally, but maybe the revenue is not there to necessarily back that up, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy that this happened to Leicester and not to Everton. I mean, I know the circumstances are different. Like you guys were in the championship when the ruling came down, and
Yeah.
it worked kind of in your favor that way. But from your perspective, like when you read through all of this, does Everton have anything they can go back to the courts with?
I'm not sure right now because that season's already done where they lost the points. I think same with Forest. I think, and like you said at the beginning, this is the biggest issue, and it's going to matter with the 115 charges that Manchester City have because Leicester City attacked the Premier League's jurisdiction and beat them, and that's the biggest thing that they beat them. And City have almost a blueprint to beat all of these charges.
Yeah, it's well, how does so I'm a little bit confused on that piece, right? It's like what can City do, I guess, with this precedent that's been set, right? Is like can they now just go back to the Premier League and say, look, you've already barred another club from their charges because of a technicality? Is that really what they're going to argue, or is it deeper than that? Am I just missing something?
I mean, I think they're definitely going to comb through the loopholes, and I'm sure they've done it ever since they've been charged.
Yeah.
And it makes me think why have they not been brought up on them yet? And that I think is the weirdest thing to me. I mean, this has been out for a year and a half. I think
Yeah.
that they've had all these charges. So I think, to me, there might be loopholes in there that Manchester City found, and that's why it's going on this steep. And Premier League might be in real issue with these charges.
Yeah, I mean, the litigation does begin this month as we record, September. The verdict is not expected until early next year. I think we've all been told, right, that with 115 charges, the process for kind of going through those, dissecting them, understanding what can be enforced, what cannot, understanding just what the next steps could be depending on the verdict. All of that takes a lot of time, and I understand that. I think all eyes will be on the Premier League in terms of the precedent that this new Leicester City appeal decision has created, and how Man City will deal with that. I don't know, man. I think it's go ahead.
And I think one thing to say, Leicester City has 2 charges. This is 115. So that doesn't mean that Manchester City will win all 115. It only takes one to get in trouble. So, I mean, we'll see when all this plays out. And I assume it'll be behind closed doors. We won't really know until early January.
Yeah. What are the odds from your perspective that City is free and clear of all 115 charges, or at least to a point where nothing like critical takes place with their standing in the league, right? They don't get relegated. They're not going to drop a 15 to 20 point deduction on them. It's maybe going to be a slap on the wrist and a hefty fine. How realistic is that?
I think it's 50-50. I mean, it just it just feels like they're not much is going to happen to City just because they're City, and it's just the feeling I get. Part of my feeling is this is gonna go on until this is my whole theory, and it might be a little bit off on a tangent, but so this is probably going to be Guardiola's last year. So City's going to try to fight this out until next season. Then bring in a new manager. They might get deducted 20 to 30 points. They're not going to get relegated. They're good enough. So they'll give a manager a whole nother year to kind of go into it, and then that will be all done. That's just kind of my feeling. What's going to happen?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it'll be interesting to see, what happens, how the Premier League chooses to kind of go about this. I do think that take that you have, the theory that you have, is pretty spot on. We'll see if it ends up actually coming true that way. If it does, though, and they kind of work with City, if you will, to kind of make this an easy transition for the current incumbent as a manager to kind of exit, walk off into the sunset, so to speak, and then you kind of, almost transition the entire team, the front office, into this, and a manager, right, into this new era where they're starting off for being, with a handicap, being behind, and having to work their way up, and still being able to operate the way that City does. I don't know, man. Yeah. It's a wild shout. If it fucking takes place, it'll be really interesting to see. But hopefully this doesn't backfire, man. And not that I'm sitting here hoping that Manchester City get charged with something. I just want teams to be held accountable, especially when you think about how much money those guys have to spend versus what others don't have, right? Like it's just kind of insane when you kind of put it all together like that. So, look, we'll find out, man. But I think for now, right now, everything's to be determined. So stay tuned.